Welcome to the Rico and Hook Sports Talk Show, where we'll be bringing you weekly sports news and opinions here on Wayne Hills TV.
The NFL playoffs are just around the corner, and the MLB hot stove is heating up. Hook and I are going to make our predictions in the world of sports and then give you sports news from around the world. I'm Rico.
And I'm a Hook, and this is Rico and Hook. So we got a lot to talk about on the NFL so far. I mean, Week 13 just wrapped up, and New York Giants, man, 20-20, a tie with the Washington Commanders. How do you feel about that last game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Giants fan my whole life, so it's been decent suffering over the past couple of years. But overall, I mean, last week there's a couple controversial calls between the refs, and there's a taunting penalty on the center for the Giants. John Feliciano goes up, flexes in front of a couple of the Commanders players, 15-yard penalty, brings back the third down. It kind of messed up that whole drive. The Giants had to punt the ball away.
I mean, you want to talk about suffering, try being a Jets fan. I mean, losing to the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, we just had a chance to take the lead in the fourth quarter and then just blowing it. I mean, Robert Saleh is a great coach defensively, but offensively, it just seems like he just doesn't know how to handle a quarterback. Yeah. That's a huge problem. But somebody who's not doing a lot of suffering is Cowboys fans. I mean, 54-19. I mean, how do you feel about the Cowboys recently?
I mean, it seems like they just wouldn't stop scoring in the fourth quarter. They scored, 30-something unanswered points in the fourth quarter, kept piling on the Colts. I don't know what they were upset about, but it seems like Mike McCarthy just kept dialing up every play possible.
And, you know, the Cowboys have been very successful at the quarterback position, a team that hasn't been so successful so far. The San Francisco 49ers, first Trey Lance, now Jimmy Garoppolo out for the season. 2022 Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, now the quarterback. How do you feel about this 49ers team for the rest of the season?
I mean, overall, they just traded from Christian McCaffrey at the trade deadline. They have a lot of good pieces around them. And their defense, obviously stellar. Nick Bosa, probably Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And then talked about another quarterback that just recently got injured in news recently, Lamar Jackson. He's out 1 to 3 weeks in MCL sprain. That's going to be big for the Ravens in the close division with the Bengals.
I mean, yeah, for the 49ers and the Ravens, I mean, with free agent Baker Mayfield just getting released by the Panthers, I mean, they can definitely swoop that guy up, and he has a lot of different options on both teams that he can end up utilizing as the quarterback. And, you know, a lot of options wide receiver-wise. Christian Watson for the Green Bay Packers has been amazing these past 4 weeks. I mean, he's just been racking up touchdowns and receptions, 401 yards and 7 touchdowns so far in the season. How do you feel about this rookie wide receiver?
I mean, he's just been off the charts. Seems like they're now at the point where they lost Devontae Adams in the offseason, trying to get Christian Watson the ball any way possible because most teams shut down the run with Aaron Jones, DJ Dillon in the backfield too. And then other rookies who have been just completely on fire. Tariq Woolen, cornerback for the Seahawks, and your Jets cornerback, Sauce Gardner, completely locked down corners this year.
I mean, yeah, Christian Watson, amazing. And a lot of rookies so far this season have just been so impressive. Like you said, Sauce Gardner, Kayvon Thibodeau for your New York Giants has just been amazing. And, I mean, Christian Watson was racking up fantasy points like crazy, several 20-plus point games. Who would you say is your fantasy football MVP so far this season?
I mean, it's close between a couple guys. I have to say Josh Jacobs. It's unfortunate I did trade him away pretty early in my fantasy season, but I don't know. Who's your fantasy MVP?
I got to go with the most consistent running back in the league right now. Austin Eckler has been amazing. I mean, several 20-plus, 30-plus point games. I know Josh Jacobs had that huge 50-plus point game just a few weeks back, but Eckler has just been so consistent recently.
Just want to give a shout-out to Geno Smith, too. Basically just saved my season the past couple weeks. Traded for him. Traded for him at the trade deadline. He's won me the past couple games. I'm in the playoffs now, so.
I mean, it's really a shame that he couldn't put up these numbers with the Jets or the Giants.
Same thing with the Giants when he took Eli Manning's consecutive winning streak, which was kind of unfortunate, but, you know, things happen. Now, don't go anywhere. The hot stove is heating up in Major League Baseball, and trades and signings are ensuing. News on Verlander and DeGrom coming along with free agency and trade news as we come back.
Welcome back to Rico and Hook. So as you know, big signing this last weekend with Jacob DeGrom, former Cy Young winner, signing with the Texas Rangers for 5 years, $185 million, and a lot of big signings have been happening recently, as you saw. Verlander kind of replacing DeGrom with his 2-year contract with the Mets. So how do you feel about, you know, these big signings recently, specifically, you know, Verlander to New York?
I mean, Verlander's going to be a big aspect to New York. Obviously, he can pitch on the big stage. New York's a hard place to pitch in for many pitchers. So I think he'll be okay there. I mean, that's a lot of money for a 39-year-old pitcher. Again, I think eventually he'll end up in the bullpen along with Scherzer over there, but he'll be a good replacement for DeGrom for the next 2 years.
I mean, yeah, you said it. New York's not an easy place to pitch. I mean,
Yeah.
you saw Frankie Montas this last season. I know it's just one season, but he did struggle in the Big Apple. And
Yeah.
Sonny Gray, another former A's pitcher, came to the Yankees and just really struggled there. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what Verlander can do. He is a former World Series champion, so I mean, I think he can definitely bring it to the Mets. And speaking on New York, Aaron Judge,
Yeah.
our man over there, 9 years, $360 million. I mean, how do you feel about such a big signing and such a nerve-wracking offseason it's been for him?
Yeah, as we discussed before, like we were predicting where Judge was going to go a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation around the Giants, and I'm really happy. Obviously, he didn't go to the Giants. Most people, personally, me, like even you, thought that he was going to go there. Family, close to home, all that thing. So I wasn't surprised because I think he wants to win here. But I mean, the Yankees really haven't come close in the past couple of years to winning.
I mean, yeah, 9 years, $360 million. That's $40 million a year. Same contract he got from the Giants. I mean, it was really between staying closer to his parents over in the Bay Area, or staying and just building up his New York Yankee legacy. And I think that legacy, for players like Mariano Rivera, players like Derek Jeter, who played their entire careers with the Yankees, it's just a very important thing to have. And I mean, speaking on the Yankees, Brian Reynolds recently requested a trade from the Pirates, and New York has been a very big talking point for him. I mean, whether it's the Yankees and the Mets, two teams that really need outfielders. So how do you feel about Brian Reynolds, and where do you think he'll end up?
Obviously, I want Brian Reynolds in the outfield. He's a really good outfielder. Yankees did trade for Harrison Bader last offseason. He's a really good player, mainly a defensive guy, but he did have a couple of big hits in the postseason. Andrew Benintendi, still a free agent. Yankees did trade for him from the Royals. I would look forward to having Brian Reynolds on the Yankees, though, and I feel like many people would like him there, especially because on the Pirates, obviously not the best franchise out there, so you would want to get out and go to a better team like the Yankees.
I mean, yeah, Reynolds is a guy, he's gotten comparisons to players like Mike Trout, Andrew Jones. I mean, he's just a very talented, all-around great player, and the unfortunate part about him is being so great that to trade him, you're going to have to give up some prospects. You got your Jason Dominguez, your Anthony Volpe, your Oswald Peraza, so it's definitely going to be a tough trade to make, but overall, I think Brian Reynolds would be a great New York Yankee, and I think he would just a great player in general.
Yeah, so let's switch up. We've been talking about these outfielders. Now let's talk about the shortstop market. It was really big this year. I mean, there are a couple of big names like Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, who just got a big 11-year, $300 million contract from the Phillies. Obviously, we just talked about it before we hopped on the segment. You weren't a big fan of the Trey Turner signing?
I mean, I do like Trey Turner's game. I mean, incredibly fast player, great hitter, great fielder. But overall, I think that, 11 years, $300 million, you never know what's going to happen to a player like that. I mean, Xander Bogaerts, you saw 11 years, $280 million, two very similar players. But, getting two really big contracts, you never know, what's going to happen in the long run. I mean, overall, he's a great player, but, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what he's going to do in a Phillies uniform.
Yeah, definitely. And then Xander Bogaerts, former Red Sox there, he won 2 World Series rings with them. Just signed an 11-year deal at 30 years old with the Padres. I don't know what they're going to do with those 3 shortstops there.
I mean, yeah, you got Han-Seong Kim, you got Fernando Tatis, who's missing the first 20 games, and you got Xander Bogaerts. Now, I think the plan would be for Tatis to play second or left field. I mean, you got Juan Soto in right field already, and it looks like Xander Bogaerts, who has struggled defensively throughout his career, but definitely is a step up defensively from Fernando Tatis. So it's going to be a very interesting, way to see how the Padres handle those 3 shortstops on the team.
Yeah, and I also saw before Tatis could eventually request a trade. Obviously, I'm not sure what his no trade clause is. He could have one. It's a big contract that he signed just last year. So we'll see if he wants to trade out of there. I know he wants to play shortstop, and he said that in the past, but I can't see Xander Bogaerts playing anywhere else besides short.
I mean, yeah, but Fernando Tatis Jr., great player all around, and we saw a lot of, it's difficult playing in a kind of medium market like San Diego, not huge, not small, but, I mean, they've been spending a lot, and, I mean, you've seen players like him request trades, big-name players like Wilson Contreras, who just a few years ago requested a trade. It was rumored from the Cubs. We were talking about he could possibly have ended up as a Yankee, but he recently signed a 5-year, $87 million contract with the Cardinals. I mean, losing out on Yadier Molina to retirement now, Wilson Contreras in St. Louis. How do you feel about that recent pickup?
I mean, I think he's going to replace Yadier Molina, one of the greatest catchers of all time, who I'm pretty sure he will stay in some sort of the system, like with the Cardinals, Yadier Molina. Wilson Contreras, Yankees wanted him a couple years ago. Many teams wanted him around the league. Red Sox, when they struggled at the catcher position. So I think we'll see where he goes. But there's a couple other signings around the league. Kenley Jansen, the closer, he was on that World Series team for the Dodgers the past couple of years. So we'll see how that goes with them. 2-year, $30 million to $32 million deal. So we'll see how that is.
I mean, definitely a very talented closer. He's getting up there in age, about 35. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting to see. Obviously he's going to get a short-term deal, but, I mean, the Red Sox, Boston's a big market, and Kenley Jansen has thrived in big markets. As you said before, he played with the Dodgers, he played with Atlanta, so I think he can definitely handle a big city like Boston.
Yeah, we talked about earlier how the Cubs lost Wilson Contreras, so they went out and signed a big bat, Cody Bellinger, obviously MVP just a couple years ago, but struggled the past two. I don't really know what's up with him.
I mean, this is a guy who could end up giving you, 250 and 30 home runs, or he can end up, being washed out of the league with 200 average. I mean, he's definitely a hit or miss type of player, but I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what he can do outside of a huge market like Los Angeles. And as you said, the Cubs have really been going out after losing out on Contreras. They signed former Yankee Jameson Taillon. Struggled a bit this year, but overall, I felt like he was pretty productive. How do you feel about Taillon leaving New York and now ending up in Chicago?
I mean, I don't think for the Yankees it's going to be a big loss. Obviously, he was like in the middle of the rotation, towards the end of the rotation kind of guy. Yankees are looking after a pitcher like Carlos Rodon, who is still out there on the market. But we saw in another signing, Josh Bell, another big bat like Cody Bellinger, went to the Guardians this past week. They gave him a pretty good contract over there. He'll play first base, probably be more of a DH. But the Guardians, I think, are a very young team that's coming up. Like, what do you think about them?
I mean, the Guardians, as you saw, made it to the ALCS, made it to the World Series. So, I mean, overall, just an amazing team that you saw.
We saw this past week that Josh Bell signed with the Guardians, another big bat, just like Cody Bellinger, as we talked about earlier. The Guardians are a very young team. They were in the playoff mix for a little bit. What do you think about their team overall?
I mean, as you said, great young team, some really good starting pitchers. I mean, you got Shane Bieber, Aaron Savali, players like Daniel Espino also on the come up. And, they were missing a first baseman. They have Josh Naylor, who can play the first base position, but he's really working around with the DH position mainly. So Josh Bell, just a pretty good fielder at the first base position, and overall a great hitter, as you said. I mean, he's the veteran bat that they really need for such a young team.
Yeah, I think that wraps things up here for our baseball segment. Next up, we'll discuss our sports predictions for our current seasons and then the upcoming seasons across sports. Welcome back to Rico and Hook. Now we're going to discuss sports predictions for the current season and then the upcoming seasons all across sports. So let's just start with the Super Bowl, the big game, most watched game across the whole entire United States, basically. So who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl this year, Jason?
I think the Bills definitely have a great chance. I mean, they have an all-around great team. I mean, you got Josh Allen at quarterback. You got some great receivers like Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. But, if there's any team that's really going to, put up a fighting chance against them, it's got to be the Eagles. I mean, we've seen what Jalen Hurts has done all season long. He's been a great player. He's got a lot of weapons around him, too, like players like Devontae Smith. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. If I had to make my choice, it would probably be Bills-Eagles, and I think the Bills would win it all this year. What about you?
I mean, for me, obviously I'm a big Giants fan. Don't want to see the Eagles win the Super Bowl, but they're the best team in the league right now, and I don't think it's close. And I've seen Josh Allen struggle at times, especially with the offensive line issues. The Eagles got the best line in the league, I think. So I can see the Eagles definitely winning the Super Bowl this year. But Bills will be on the AFC side, and I can see the Eagles taking the win.
Yeah, I mean, Super Bowl, as you said, probably the most watched championship game across the U.S., but now moving on to just the entire world, what they watch all around is, soccer. You got the World Cup going on. Who do you think is taking it all this year?
I think there's so many teams out there. Like, obviously, it's starting to get narrowed down to a couple of the top teams. I got to say Europe is probably the best team out there. They seem like the strongest team. They seem the most compelled team. Obviously, they've had a couple great wins so far. I mean, who do you think's going to win the World Cup?
I think France has the best chance. I mean, they won it the last time back in 2018. I think they have a great chance at repeating. I mean, they got some great players. Kylian Mbappe has looked amazing. I mean, he had those 2 goals recently against Poland. I mean, just an all-around amazing player. Great dribbler, great shooter. And I think he has the shot to lead this team all the way.
Yeah, so let's now switch it up, go back to some baseball. Who do you think is going to win the World Series? Obviously, a bunch of free agency just came in. There'll still be more to come. But who do you think is going to win the World Series this year?
Well, I mean, I'd love to say the Yankees. I mean, Aaron Judge
I
recently
doubt that, to be
resigning.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, Aaron Judge resigning, I still think they need a few more chips. I mean, lost out on Tyone. I think a few more players like Benintendi might have eventually leave the team. So I think they need a few more, assets to the team to really build up a championship roster. But I mean, I know they missed out on Justin Verlander this offseason, but I think the Astros have the best chance at winning the World Series, and I think they're going to repeat. I hate it too.
No,
I
hurts,
hate it
yeah.
too.
You can't say that.
It
Come on.
it's tough to say, but I mean, the Astros are easily the best team in the league right now. What about you?
I mean, obviously Phillies were in it last year. I like their new addition to Trey Turner, even though you don't like it. But I think the Phillies are going to go all the way. They're going to add new pitching later in the offseason. The relievers, I think, are going to get better. There's a bunch of decent guys that are out that they can definitely sign. Bryce Harper is going to have another MVP season this year. Obviously, like you said, I want to say the Yankees, but I can't see them winning anything this year.
And I mean, as you said, I mean, the Phillies, a great bullpen, great pitching all around. I still think they need a few more assets like the Yankees. I mean, another starting pitcher would be great. I mean, they've been looking at players like Carlos Rodon. But, I mean, I still think they're a few more key pieces away from, being a World Series winner.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what you're saying. But to end off our prediction segment, we're going to talk about some world news and sports news from around the world in our next one. To end off the show, let's talk about some news from across sports. So what do you want to talk about first?
I mean, first up, we've been seeing the World Cup a lot, as you said previously. I mean, we've seen a lot going on so far. Morocco took down Spain in penalties. They won 3-0 in penalties. So, I mean, how do you feel about some of the big dogs like Spain and the United States falling this early?
Obviously, in the U.S., you want the United States to win no matter what. It was kind of a shock looking at the score later. Did not watch the game. But, a couple soccer is very passionate, mainly in other places around the world, not here. And actually, it's called football. I shouldn't have called it soccer. A lot of people do get offended around here. But I don't know. It just seems like soccer's been on the come up, and obviously one of the better players ever to play the sport, Cristiano Ronaldo, signed a big $200 million contract just recently.
I mean, yeah, he's signing in Saudi Arabia, which we saw the news a couple of weeks ago, and I personally thought, there's no shot. I mean, he's been playing between Spain, France, Italy, and England his entire career, and now to sign in Saudi Arabia was such a different country, and it's not a big club, but I mean, $200 million, it's hard to deny that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was like over 2.5 years, something like that. That's a lot of money for a short amount of time. And I want to say he's, 37 years old?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like LeBron James. I mean, despite his age, he's still one of the greatest of all times, and he's still doing it very well.
Yeah, that's like a couple of the guys. Messi, he's 36 now or so, and a bunch of them just recently that are the older soccer players of the younger generation. This is probably going to be the last World Cup, unfortunately, so it's good to see them still playing now.
Yeah, we saw Ronaldo, Messi, and Neymar all announce that just a few weeks ago before it started.
Now let's switch it up. Let's go to the NBA. So we saw a couple of the teams doing well. Lakers, obviously, a lot of injuries affecting them over the past couple of years. LeBron James is still there. But Anthony Davis did have a big game the other night. He had 55 points. What are your opinions on that?
I mean, Anthony Davis is really on pace to be the MVP so far this season. 55 points, 17 rebounds, 3 blocks. I mean, he's looking like a prime Shaquille O'Neal out there. I mean, you've still got your players like Jason Tatum. You've still got players like Luka Doncic. But Anthony Davis, what he's doing is just unmatched.
Yeah, I mean, now let's switch it to college basketball. UNC, one of the top college basketball teams in the country. Obviously, we've seen those teams like Kansas. They seem to always be in the college basketball finals every year. They just lost 4 games in a row. I mean, that could be a big thing affecting their playoff hopes. Obviously, games in college basketball, when it comes to 4 loses, is much more important than the NBA. So, what are your opinion? What do you think the UNC is going to have to do about this?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge Duke fan, so I'm more than happy to see UNC lose 4 games in a row. I mean, coming into the season, they were the number 1 ranked preseason team, and now, to fall into out of the rankings, I mean, reminds me a bit of Louisville this year. They just took our former assistant coach, Nolan Smith. He's now the head coach at Louisville. They're 0-8 right now, and it's just really surprising to see some of these teams losing big games like that. And, I mean, UNC is a great team. They have a great young coach in Hubert Davis. They have a great experienced team, especially in that front court with Baycott and Nance. But, I mean, it's just unfortunate to see, 4 very close games that they just lost. They couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch a lot of college basketball, but you always see those teams like UNC, Duke. Obviously, you're a big Duke fan. All you do is talk about Duke. Haven't heard anything good about them in the past couple of years. But just to switch it up back to soccer, Messi apparently is signing with a new team.
Well, I mean, Messi's got about a year or two left on his current contract, but I mean, there has been rumors flowing around that he will be signing with the MLS once his contract is up, specifically with the football club Inter Miami. So once again, I mean, Miami, a very big sports city, but I mean, for soccer, not very big. And Messi signing with the MLS kind of reminds me of Pele signing in Seattle from years and years ago. I mean, such a great international player coming to the MLS just for kind of like an American final tour.
And just to wrap things up, we saw the MLB came out with their finalists recently on all of the Gold Glove awards, all of the MVP awards. We saw Aaron Judge and Paul Goldschmidt and the NL both get their awards. A couple of the pitchers, who were a couple of the pitchers that they got their awards for?
I mean, you saw Sandy Alcantara, the National League Cy Young. I mean, had an amazing season. I mean, almost sub-2 ERA, ton of strikeouts, just an amazing player. Was kind of hoping that the Yankees were to trade for him last offseason. It was kind of a rumor floating around, but he ended up signing that big contract extension. Yeah. It really worked out for them.
Yeah, him and Pablo Lopez, who were also down there. Yankees were looking at him a couple times.
Thank you for tuning in to our first episode of Rico and Hook. I'm Hook.
I'm Rico, and we'll see you next time on Wayne Hills TV.